Good morning, my name is John with the Pine Tree, and I have a great pleasure being here with Doug Shin. This is another one of our little updates on the whole driveway slope issue, and Doug Shin is on the community committee that is working on this issue with the county, and thank you.
Good morning, John.
Now, I guess there was a study session last week and everything else, so what's the latest on this issue right now?
Well, the update on the driveway slope issue is, it's like trying to, the slope issue is like Ebbets Pass going over the pass. It's twisty, turns, lots of changes, gotta go slow, gotta go,
Right. Right.
So there's a lot to update you on, and I'm gonna try and boil it down into some key nuggets for you.
Because last time we went like half hour, so did we? We just
we could go all day. we want to make this. We want to make it so that the viewer can get the key kernels early on in the interview.
Got it.
Okay.
I'll get out of the way and just let him go then.
No. It's taken a lot of work to get to this point, and you're right. We did it. From our last interview, there was another meeting held at the firehouse that turned into more of a community forum.
Yeah.
That was intended to focus on the mitigation ideas, but it became another community forum which didn't really address the mitigations as well as I'm sure the fire department had hoped. And since that time, we asked Marita, and Marita cooperated to bring a study session at the board chambers. And that was a packed house and was quite a
standing room only.
You put that up on your website, and if anyone has 3.5 hours to invest, you may know as much as we know. But I think it did a great job of presenting to the Board of Supervisors the huge level of concern that exists in the community towards these issues. And I made a key presentation there, and I'm going to try and boil down the points that I made. And then so let me start with that. We made the presentations at the board.
Can I add one little thing?
Go right ahead.
And one thing I think is, if you've been following the issue at all, is there's several people in the community, of which Doug is one, that have put a huge amount of time and their own effort of following this issue. This is a very complex issue. There's a lot of arcane twists and turns to it, that I think that a lot of people owe a debt of gratitude to Doug and some other people for following this issue on their own nickel, because this is something that I think that that goes to the core of, obviously they have some vested interests in doing it for their clients and things like that, but also I think it goes a little bit bigger than that, because but anyway, I just wanted to add that, and I think there's a lot of people that owe you a debt. I think because of the time you've put on this issue.
Well, thank you, and it just has become one of those issues that I feel real strongly about, and when I do, I don't back off until I understand something. And that's the problem here, is we don't really understand the county's position, and until we get that understanding, we're going to keep asking, and that's what's going on. Barry Ward has been a key member on our committee, as well as other builders. But what happened is, we were going through that process. We said, hey, well, let's stop for a moment and read the code. And we read the code, and it's very clearly enumerated in the county fire and life safety code that this was all adopted per the law, to meet the law back in 1992, and did a great job of putting the county in the position of being the decision maker as to how this would be implemented. And for all these years, basically a verbal agreement had been worked out between the county and CAL FIRE that if we paved the driveways, that was the mitigation that made everybody happy. Now that's a simplistic statement, but that basically is the way it had worked since 1992, when the county code was adopted, until about 6 months ago. Okay, and it was not only approved by the county, it was approved by CAL FIRE, it was and all the fire officials, and even sent to the state and approved at a state level. So when we got involved and we started saying, well, we want new mitigations, we said, wait a minute, you have an existing code. We want you to either use this code while we work on the mitigations, okay? Or work on some change to that. And so we threw a monkey wrench in their plan to rush into mitigations, because we said, no, you have a legal obligation to enforce this existing code, not make changes to a new code without a legal process.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the crux of, I would say, Barry and I's key concern, as well as many others who have looked at this issue closely. So we went to the study session, and I gave my speech, as you will, as everybody had a chance to do, and I boiled it down into what I think are the crux of the issue as we see it. And having studied it closely, we're really representing the public point of view. I'm not doing this for any, I mean, I certainly have customers that are being affected, but it affects every landowner.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So, number one, we recommended to the board that they do the following. Number one, do nothing until they receive a written notification from CAL FIRE that there is a problem.
Right.
So in other words, we're all running around and we're having meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out, and it was verified by county staff, that it came about due to verbal conversations in the halls of the county.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the legal justification for those concerns? And does that come from the proper level in the government to say, county, you aren't performing correctly? And that's basically called a decertification letter, as we understand it. Well, nothing in writing has come from any of the fire agencies saying, hey, county, we don't like the way you're doing business.
Mm-hmm.
And we want the county to stand up to the fire agencies and simply say, put it in writing, and we will then respond. But if we don't have it in writing, it's just verbal chit-chat.
Right.
Now, they don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying, but
Right.
I'm telling you the way we view it.
Sure.
So do nothing unless you receive written notification. Two, if you do get a statement of non-compliance from them, then create a blue ribbon committee. I use that term to mean a committee that would be a representative, like a stakeholders meeting group, to study the issue.
Only better? Is that the...
And bring their recommendations to the board. Well, just, you know, really good people. Because the one point I made to the board is that,
Right.
unlike issues of the past, as you delve into this issue, this is an extremely complicated
Yes,
issue.
it is. And I think this is, there's legs to this one all over the place.
Well, it's not only complicated, but the ramifications. In
Yeah.
other words, the results, how it affects people by eliminating people's ability to use their land and how it might affect their existing homes. Lots of big issues. So this was no simple line item adjustment in the code and then move on. And that's what we tried to tell the Board of Supervisors. Hey, this is a biggie. And a biggie deserves careful process. So we wanted them to form a committee if they were noticed by the fire agencies, and then also to instruct the county council to start at the state level, get an opinion from the state attorney general, process all of the rules and regulations, and advise the Blue Ribbon Committee and the Board of Supervisors what his findings were from that review. And we feel that's important because a lot of this goes to how you interpret legal codes, legal law. So that was the third thing that we recommended. And the fourth was that we instruct the staff, that the board instruct their staff to, as they have for the last 16 years, use the previous simple mitigation of a paved driveway that is written into this code up until such time as a new policy becomes created or is not created from the Blue Ribbon Committee's efforts.
Right.
So that's really the crux. So we're not talking, we don't want to talk mitigation, okay? We have a mitigation right in this code, and it says anything over X percent, let's not get into the numbers, but there is a threshold. Anything greater than these numbers, then you have to pave your driveway, and that was the accepted code going back to 1992.
Right.
Okay, so we just say, we're just holding this up in front of our supervisors and saying, we have a code. It says exactly what you need to do. Use it until such time as it becomes a different code.
Right.
And I don't know if it's too simple or too complicated or what, but we have not been able to get the kind of traction from the county.
Right.
And admittedly, the study session is not one of a lot of give and take.
Yeah.
It's we talk, they listen.
Yes.
But
and a lot of people talked. It did run about 3.5 hours.
It was quite a meeting. It was quite a meeting. And but we did get some good results out of that meeting. first of all, people got heard. Secondly, the Board of Supervisors understood how important it was to take a position on if your house were to burn down on a steep
Yes.
lot,
Yes.
that they could not prevent you from rebuilding, and that you could rebuild. And that statement came through from the Board of Supervisors.
Do you want to expand on
meeting.
that at all? Because I think that goes to some of the existing real estate inventory type of thing. I mean, is
Yeah,
that-
it's just
okay.
simply that, and getting into slope numbers is really complicated, but let's just say in the state code it says that nothing greater than 16%.
Right.
But we have many, many driveways greater than 16% with homes on them.
And county roads greater than 16%.
And many, many homes on driveways greater than 16%. To put it in perspective, 16% in our opinion is not a steep slope.
Mm-hmm.
It is just moderate
Mhm.
for what we're used to up
Yeah.
here. So you built a home years ago, it's greater than 16%. If it were to be different than the code they adopted, you would be exempt. Your house burns down or is damaged, you're going to be able to replace it on the same footprint that you built on,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody can come to you and say, by the way, we want you to mitigate your driveway, or because your driveway can't be mitigated, you can't rebuild. So that fear,
Yeah.
which came from CAL FIRE's position that that could be the case,
Mm-hmm.
was eliminated, we believe, by the county supervisors unanimously making a statement, and that's supposed to follow in writing,
Mm-hmm.
that this does not apply to existing homes.
And a minor clarification of that is it was my understanding that minor additions or remodels and stuff would also be included in that, but things like mother-in-law structures or something, that would kick in.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
if
wanna-
you're gonna add
yeah.
a whole nother structure, but
Right.
there's a number of things that the state code's very clear on that are exempt, and existing homes were exempt.
Yeah.
And therefore, the code is properly interpreted by the Board of Supervisors to mean it does not apply to existing houses.
Yeah.
So, and therein, that's where it gets all hazy, because we think this code should be used until such time as a new code replaces it, and that's our struggle with the county and the Board of Supervisors for us to get through to them.
Right.
Use this code. We don't have any problem with addressing possible change, going through a smooth process, and then when you have a new code, by golly, that's the new code. But
So
you don't stop using this, which
Right.
is what they have done and they have claimed that it's through a different interpretation.
Right.
Well,
Right.
how do you interpret something differently when it's been done for 16 years as the rule of the land? So
No,
that's-
and I guess as a point of clarification, is it's worthy. This is not a disagreement, or because these are fire and safety, health codes, and it's not something to where the property owners are against, proper, keeping fire and healthy fire people safe and everything else as far as the homes. This is more of a process issue on how it's been approached. Is that, I mean,
Let me present it to you this way.
Sure.
This is how we look at it. If the county, whether it was verbal or in writing,
Mhm.
was tipped off that these rules and regulations weren't making the fire people happy, and they didn't think that they were good enough,
Right.
and if the county had said, great, CAL FIRE, we're gonna keep using our current code because that's the law of the land, but
Mhm.
we're going to start a study group, and we're going to dig into this, and we're going to work towards some things that will make you happier and give you some other mitigations besides the one, which is pave your driveway,
Right.
okay? Whether you believe in it or not, we're talking process. You can
Right.
argue all day long whether paving it is enough or that 300 more mitigations is the best thing.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle is probably the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But we just wanted them to say, and we still believe, we'll study it, we'll be issuing permits under this rule because these are our rules. And at the point in time that we adopt a new ordinance, we'll start implementing that.
Okay.
And that's all we've ever
Yeah.
wanted to get across. What happens when you stop using a code and stop issuing permits,
It's limbo, isn't it?
Puts everybody in the middle ground. Nobody knows where they are. There's a lot of emotion that comes out. You get big, angry public meetings. And we believe that if they had gone the process that we're suggesting, fire, hold your guns, we're going to work on it, issue the few permits that needed to be issued, that the public would have embraced the entire process and said, Board of Supervisors, what a great way to do business.
Right.
What a great way to do business. And by the way, maybe it isn't enough just to have a paved driveway in modern times. So let's look at what the fire department's concerns are. And out of that group could have come a beautiful recommendation for a new code that would have been adopted. And guess what? Everybody would have been happy.
Yeah.
And I do mean it. And not that I'm Pollyanna, but the county would have been getting what they wanted in an updated code. CAL FIRE would have gotten new mitigations, and the public would have gotten the sense of being involved and know that the process was legal because the old code was being used until the new code was created. Every code that exists down at the county, and I don't know how many there are, I don't want to study that, can be interpreted differently by different people, but you don't stop using that code willy-nilly, if you will, until there's a new code to replace it. Now, that's a philosophical position that we feel we're going to stand on until we can figure out, until they can tell us the reasoning why they would stop using a code. We're going to keep yelling loud and clear.
And we had, on that same vein, we had some preliminary conversations with some folks at the county to see, just to ask if there was a, off the top of the head, legal reason why they couldn't do public notifications on changes, not just on things like driveway slope, but for any change in interpretation of county ordinance that affects commerce. And why couldn't they do a thing that they, and like Doug was saying, it says, look, we found an issue that is going to need to be addressed, where there's some issues of this code that we may need to make some changes to. So we're going to look at that the next 6 months, and then we're going to have some implementation. And we haven't heard back any definitive reason why that couldn't be a standard county policy.
Right. And in our mind, that's the way, and we're in private enterprise. We're not in county government. We don't know the way they do business. But we just believe that a better process would have served everybody's needs. A lot of time would have been saved. A lot of angst would have been avoided. There would have been, the emotion would have been in control. If somebody was saying, well, what's going to happen about my house? Say, don't worry, the existing code says this, that's what we're using, and those new rules will come out, be published to the public. They'll go through a process at the county that you have to go through to change any code legally. What the county is saying is we interpreted it different, and that gives us the right to quit using it, and we object to that. We don't agree with them at all, because every code could have a different interpretation. Therefore, every code could not be used until the county, in their wisdom, replaces it, and that means you just stop issuing any forward movement based on the codes that we have. And that doesn't work for the public. That doesn't work for businesses in the trenches, builders who have to know, engineers who have to know, realtors who have to know, and baseline, the core of this is owners that have to know. For there to have been a rumor that you could lose your house if your house burned down never should have happened. Never should have happened.
And it came out as more than just rumor, because that was actually communication from the county, wasn't it?
No, it was CAL FIRE that put that on the table. Going back to a first quote-unquote stakeholders meeting, CAL FIRE said, no, that's not true. We said here's our interpretation. That means it's existing homes are exempt. And he said, well, if it burns down, that may not be true. And that was the November meeting, wasn't it? Isn't that the, it's December? Yeah.
December. Yeah. Okay.
So again, process is really important, and we believe in a smooth process that's inclusive, that's transparent, that allows everybody notice. The Blue Ribbon Committee, for examples, would be reporting to the press, telling them what progress they're making. And we believe in the public's right to have the input into the laws that affect them. The county is our government, but they don't stand alone. They serve. They're supposed to serve the people, and they need to listen to the people. And they have changed the code without listening to the people, and that's a big mistake. What came out of the public meeting, which I thought was so fascinating, and John, you were there and you filmed it, is the entire meeting was a lot of what CAL FIRE has based the desire for mitigations comes from what they call the Mariposa study.
Yeah.
And this is just a fire truck going up a grade and analyzing what falls off and what slope it can go up, and they're really hanging their hat on that report. And part of their conclusion was when a fire truck goes up a slope, it's not able to pump 100% of the capacity of that tank.
Right.
Well, at the very last speaker at this public meeting, trust the public, is a built fire equipment. He's a fire engine engineer. He's built the equipment, and he said that's easily solved by having an exit valve in both ends of the tank of the truck. So whether you're going downslope or upslope or flat, you're going to pump 100% of the water because you're going to hook the hose up to the logical end.
Right.
And it was like it took all the air out of the argument.
Right.
And he said that improvement would cost $250.
Right.
So for $250, they outfit a truck with an exit valve at both ends of the tank, and then there is no big concern that you're going to be on a slope where you can't pump 100%. This was an example of public input that maybe even the fire people weren't aware of, to modify their equipment as opposed to tell people we're not going to build on these slopes.
And I guess a little tiny bit of thing on the public safety aspect, because we've talked to some fire personnel that were down in the San Diego area recently on that issue as well. And there may be, and I don't think that the members of the public were expecting in any way for the fire personnel to put themselves or their crews in any harm's way, because we were talking to some of the fire personnel down there in the San Diego. Let's say we have a big rolling forest fire through this area, through the upcountry area. There may be
Heaven
some
forbid.
homes, yes, heaven forbid. But there may be some homes that don't get saved just because if it is a long driveway and they may get personnel trapped back in there, you know, or because they were making calls down in the San Diego area to where, look, we're gonna try to defend that one, we're gonna skip that one, and that one. And I think this goes to the issue to where maybe I'm going into an area you don't want to go to, but it's common sense because
we do want to go there because what came out of that is we had fire personnel who were testifying at the public hearing that were supporting our contention that driveway is one of many factors. It is not the only factor.
Right.
A rolling fire, depending on wind, humidity, direction of burn, all of these issues, you can't just point at the driveway and say, okay, we lost all these houses because they had steep driveways. Oh, look, they're all at 23%.
Right.
There's proof.
Right.
They can't do that because a flat house will burn as fast as a steep house. So the fire department's contention, in our opinion, that driveway slopes have to be controlled as a public safety measure, that's something that needs to be discussed pretty thoroughly before you tell people with lots in excess of 23%, you're out of luck, your lot is unbuildable and now worthless. That's a big mitigation in our mind.
Right.
Okay.
So I think this in some ways goes to just a transparency of county process and public and property rights, right? Isn't that?
It's where regulation meets your rights to use your property the way you see fit.
Right.
We have a lot of regulations. We don't live in a world where you can do anything you want. Now, at least not in our area.
Sure.
So you have government mandated setbacks. You have government mandated septic setbacks. You end up with a building envelope where you can build and how big your house can be based on that size of that envelope. That's regulation. But a regulation that says this is okay, but at this point you lose your land, that's pretty amazing that we would come to that.
Yeah.
Especially if the science doesn't support those positions. And as we delved into this, the comments about the truck and the valve and history of firefighters in the field, you begin to get a great amount of information that says, hey, let's go easy here and let's make sure it's all reasonable for the public that we're trying to protect.
Right.
It would be no different than telling us that the Highway Patrol determining that all accidents occur above 40 miles an hour are dangerous, so we would pass a law that we couldn't drive our cars faster than 40 miles an hour to protect ourselves.
Right.
So, there's a balance point there, and we want to be reasonable. We think the reasonable approach is through the process, a correct process. If the county would acquiesce right now and say, you know what, you guys make a valid point, we really shouldn't have stopped operating under this code.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand that's not an easy thing for them to do.
No.
But what we propose is something that's win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get their new regulation. County Fire will get new mitigations. We'll get our transparency, and we'll work together, and everybody will be happy. Another key thing that came out of the public study session, which we should point to, is that we do believe that we were able to gain traction with the Board of Supervisors, that unlike CAL FIRE's desire to have percentage cap slopes,
Right.
Or percentage of
That
slope
will be
capped,
removed, huh?
they didn't see the need for that, and
Mhm.
that's a big one. That was a big one on our plate. But we would sure like the county to start implementing this current code for the few permits that are coming through. And then as it changes, there'd be a new set of codes that future owners would deal with. And to me, it seems so simple. So we were frustrated. We got some gains coming out of the public meeting. Number one, the ability to rebuild, and number two, a sense that they don't support any cap.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, no matter how steep your lot is, there's going to be a way to build on it. Might cost you more, might be more mitigation that you have to do in the future, but
There's not going to be a hard number per se.
and there can't be,
Yeah.
because it's two case by case basis. Every lot's different in every community. So those two things were wins. The third thing that's happened is, based on that, Barry and I just were not satisfied that we were being heard on the key issue of use the code in our mind. So we have, I went to Marita, I asked her if she would set up a meeting with what I consider the key department members, county council, community service director, building department director, and the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and go into a room and have a free-for-all, a well-mannered free-for-all, and a high level of exchange of ideas and back and forth until we can either feel like we've been heard and made some progress, or they can explain to us why they aren't able to use the existing code.
Yes.
And that's what didn't happen at the Board of Supervisors study session, by the nature of the way that meeting is structured. It wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So
Right.
the back and forth is missing in this, and we feel the issue is so darned important that we needed one more shot. And Marita was successful.
Mm-hmm.
We thank Marita for all her hard work on this. She's been with us every step of the way, advising and guiding us through the county issues. So through her efforts, we have a meeting set up where just a few members of the public, Steve Buckley with SJB Consulting, who is our technician, gives us technical advice on a code could say this, but in reality on the land you can't do that.
And he may be the only one actually making money during this process on this, right? No, just kidding, Steve.
I don't know that any of us are making
I'm
money.
just joking.
We're just working on this stuff. So
With his, with his consultant, anyway.
yeah. So Steve Buckley, Barry Ward, and myself will meet with those county officials on the 26th of this month, which is March, in a last-ditch effort to try to be heard and to try to gain some traction on what we propose. If that were to come about, it would solve everything in our minds.
Right.
And we'd all be getting what we wanted. If it doesn't come about, there are some people out there that are talking about attorneys, and of course, when it goes to the attorneys, then it's a whole new ballgame.
ballgame.
And we want to avoid that. We don't
Yeah.
want it to become a protracted legal battle. We'd like it to be worked out agreeably between all parties, and we think we have a proposal that would make everybody happy. And for that reason, we're going to give it one more shot.
Sure.
We're not going to quit until we either gain understanding, gain some traction on what we're proposing, or find out why.
Right. Right.
And that's our bottom line. And that meeting, I think I already said, will occur on the 26th of March. So.
Yeah. And I think I should probably say something on our perspective as a media outlet. Is we follow county government. We've been following this county government for over 2 years. And one of the issues on this is well, somebody in one of the county department heads says, I thought you guys weren't supposed to have opinions. And we don't. What we like to see is good, clean county government. And what we've seen on this issue and previous issues is unless you have a clean prior notification process where basically you air all the laundry in public, similar to a lot of the Brown Act things as far as keeping transparency of public meetings. If there was a clear, transparent process on changes interpretation of the county code, be it this one or some others that have come up, it would eliminate so much bad will that is created, probably not even intentionally. But I think that was our perspective is why not just have a clean, transparent, open process, which is what they're talking about of modifying this county code or any county code that has prior notification, because we think this would foster enhanced investment in the county, much more respect for the county government itself. If you knew that there was a predictable process and you weren't going to wake up one morning and be surprised by the change of the week type of thing. I just wanted to add that from our perspective as a media outlet of following county government we have a lot of respect for our county elected officials. We know a lot of the supervisors work very hard. A lot of the department heads, they show up at every public meeting, a lot of goodwill that they try to do. Some ways I don't seem like they see the damage that issues like this can create.
It eats up a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's created a series of meetings. Everybody has valuable time. We've got county officials there, department heads, fire officials convening. I mean, that's a lot of manpower. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of valuable time. And if we go back to our proposal, the 4 items that we propose, if you form a blue ribbon committee and have a thorough study and come up with new ideas, that's a great way to operate.
Yeah.
So we've tried to offer a template, if you will, to the county of a way to act in such a way that it doesn't waste a lot of time, throw everybody in upheaval, create ill will, all those things on the negative side, and just don't need to happen.
Yeah.
They just don't need to happen. We also did, be interesting to tell you that we did some more research on the code itself, and the way it really worked is back in '92 when the code was adopted, the driveway mitigation was a verbal mitigation between CAL FIRE and the county for many years.
Right.
It just was the way we did business. The fire people said, that's great, and the county said, we looked at it, they're going to need to pave their driveway, and it worked. Well, it wasn't in writing. The original code in '92 did not mention the driveway paving as a mitigation.
Was that 2002 or 2001?
In 2002,
okay.
In 2002, the experience had been so good as that being the key mitigation that the county said, well, let's put it right into the code then and eliminate any ambiguity. Good thinking, actually. And a few other typographical, minor clerical corrections. That went through the legal process at the county in 2002, and codified in writing that the mitigation was the paving. So this happened fairly recently.
So you're talking
now, what happened?
Just several years ago.
Yeah. '92 they did it. They did it by gentleman's agreement. 2002 it's in writing. Here we are, 2008, and sometime in mid-2007, somebody said, we interpret that different, therefore we're not going to use the code. That's the problem that we have, because every code at the county, and I guess we could use a good example, and I'm not up on the general plan, but I don't believe you stop using the general plan while you're working on a new general plan revisions, keyword revisions. So you're using the existing general plan, committees are formed to work on revisions, and it's transparent because those committees are spreading the word to the communities. And then when the revisions are made on a date certain, that becomes the new general plan. We want that same process handled in this case, because as we discovered, and I think you could see by the public hearing, there's a lot that spins off of this. Everybody has a different opinion, everybody has a different fear, everybody looks at it differently, and this was no minor adjustment. So there's a little history on the update, the way this code was updated, and I applaud the county for improving the code in 2002, using a legal process. We'd like to applaud the county for using that same process now for any changes that they think are required to this code. We were, I'm not going to say accused, but I came away feeling like people were trying to think that Barry, others that are espousing this position are opposed to change. Well, we work in one of the most, in the real estate industry, one of the most change-driven industries in the world. It's constantly changing, and we adapt to change all the time. But I can tell you that if our association tells us they're thinking about making changes to our contract, we do not stop selling real estate for a period of time while they work on those changes. We have a contract one day, we have a new revised contract another day, and we don't miss a minute of doing the job that we are charged to do.
This just happens to be the new contract starting today. I mean, that's the...
We don't stop for 6 months while an attorney decides what the new interpretation of a contract is, or many attorneys. So
we're not... can't afford that.
No, nobody can afford it. The builders can't afford to not build. The suppliers can't afford to not supply. Owners who are looking at interest rates bouncing around are trying to pin down interest rates to determine when they're going to build. And if it's a make it up as you go county, they will choose to go elsewhere and build where they can look at the rules and rely on them. And that is a real important thing that the county has to consider in all of this.
I guess one last little question, because I think it's one thing that came out.
You've got great questions.
No, I don't know about that. But one of the things that came out of the meeting was that from the county's perspective, is they only knew of, between 2 to 5 or a very small number that, from their perspective, that were denied or held up. But I think one of the things that came out from the public sector, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the uncertainty has a chilling effect on the economy, or on the, it's the impact of uncertainty on things like this. The impact is much, much greater than any one actual permit denial or anything. Is that stating that? Because I think they was a little bit understood as they didn't really see why all the angst, so to speak, because there's only, in their perspective, only a couple or a handful. Angst is the...
Well, I think the public hearing went a long way towards demonstrating the amount of angst that is the public feels.
Yeah, that's probably an understatement.
Some people are understandably upset that they can't know whether they can rebuild their home. Yeah, I would assume anyone can understand that angst.
Yes.
And so it just is a huge issue that needs leadership.
Yeah.
And we've said that from the very beginning. And we've offered a path, and we're trying to communicate that path and hopefully gain some traction on what we're proposing. The changes that could come about through a good due process could be beneficial to our firefighters. Could be beneficial to owners in their own fire safety, and could be inexpensive changes that wouldn't be adding to the burden of the cost of building. So again, we're always working for win-win-win solutions, and we think we have the proposals on the table that can do that. So I don't know, did that answer your question?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Time will tell. The next meeting's the 26th. Is that the?
Yeah, that's
okay.
a kind of a closed session.
Yeah, not a
if you
public
will.
meeting,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not, we were just not getting anything accomplished in big emotional meetings.
Yeah.
And we want to meet with the key decision makers down there and articulate and have a back and forth to where we can have a better understanding of their perspective and see if we can't get to a place where everybody gets what they want.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like that should be that hard to get to on this issue. It doesn't.
That's part of the frustration here. Is
Because it seems fair, in some ways, a fairly easy.
We think it's simple. We think we've articulated it well. And when you take the emotion out of it, it's real simple if you use the existing code until you have a new code.
That's it.
That's what it comes down to.
Thanks, Doug.
John?
Appreciate it.
Thank you
No,
very
thanks
much.
for all your time you put on this issue and for letting us spend time in front of the camera to keep people updated on it, and we appreciate it.
Well, I'm not the only one who's worked hard on it.
I know.
And
Yes.
I'll tell you, Marita Callaway has done a great job representing our district by continually going to the county and saying, no, this is the way we need to go. We hope we can get the votes of the Board of Supervisors to what we're proposing, because it would just put an end to this.
Right. Right.
You know, you put good, well-meaning people on a committee and give them an assignment to come up with reasonable new mitigations, they're going to do a great job.
Sure.
I trust the public.
And the mitigations themselves weren't really, I mean, some of those made sense. It wasn't and I don't think anybody's disputing the validity of some of the mitigations. It's just the process, right? Isn't that
But to try and do all this through this complicated public hearings and all of that, because we really have gained in terms of the fire department officials wanted caps.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Board of Supervisors understand that that's not practical.
Right.
I think we've won on that point. I would hope so. The fact that you would worry about losing your home is off the table. You're
Yes.
you're going to be able to rebuild your home, and
Mm-hmm.
that should never have created the fear that it did. The process that we recommend is good government. It's good for the people. It'll be good for the county,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be good for the fire officials. And in that sense, we don't understand why we shouldn't be on that path right now.
Sounds good.
Because change isn't bad, changes can be good too.
It's inevitable.
Change is inevitable. I like that.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.